I say what I feel. Um, it's a hard question, actually. How do you prove that you're honest?
Yeah.
Because it's the way, it's what sits comfortably with me, right? It's
Mm.
where, I don't have to second guess myself. I know that the path that I walk is clear and true and authentic. And and the other thing that keeps me on this path of being honest, is that, as I said before, I don't want karma to come and hit me in
Sure.
the,
Sure.
and that what goes around comes around. And that is the thing that keeps me saying or doing or whatever I, intend to do, etc., on that path, because I don't want the shit to hit me. I
Yeah.
don't really want it at all.
Yeah.
I've had enough ups and downs in my life that I certainly don't want them going forward. I mean, I'm in my late 50s now, and I've had all the crap that one could have, not because of my own karma. Maybe it was before, my birth, etc. If you're looking back right into, into previous lives, etc. But certainly in this life now, till the end of time for me, that whatever I do or say is as honest as I can make it to be. And you say who's honest, but I feel that I am honest. It is a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky too because deceiving ourselves, I think a number of people have said this, but like we're the easiest ones to deceive, our own minds. And that's a tricky thing because the way to determine if you're being honest is you think about it and you assess your thinking. But if you're being dishonest with yourself, it's a very tricky thing. Like, could you catch that? Would you be aware of it to know it? And I'll ask, like you said, you're an open book. I think, I got to listen to you on another podcast. So I know you're very just direct and straightforward, honest, right? So let me ask the question. You seem like a lovely person. So this is in no way meant to go either way. I just don't know. You mentioned there's been a lot of shit in your life. There's been a lot of things, the people that have done you wrong with honesty. How do you know? How do you know that you're reading that correctly? And maybe some of that shit in your life that you've been through hasn't been maybe because you haven't been doing it right. You haven't been honest with yourself. Because I think sometimes the danger of assuming or even knowing, right, in your case, that we're always being honest is it can force you to always assume it must be somebody else. It must be something else that's happening because I know I'm being honest. I know I'm just being me. I'm being authentic. And again, I'm not suggesting that's necessarily the case with you, but that's always what I think about when that kind of comes up. When you mention, I don't second guess. I know that I'm doing what I'm doing. I often think, and I tend to be, more on the overthinking side, but like, ooh, that sounds dangerous. That sounds like it might be risky. Do you think about that at all? Do you worry about that at all?
Okay, there's a couple of questions there,
Yeah,
right?
there
So the
always is.
first
Yeah.
bit, the first bit is about, is it the way that you could have behaved in the
Sure.
past?
Yep.
I don't think that's true. People had made assumptions about me based on, negative narratives that they've had themselves, not from the actions that I've done. I know that's true. I know that's true. And I think, in yourself, yes, you can deceive yourself, but I think also, in yourself, if you are of faith and also of spirit, you've got a spiritual side, yourself, whether you're second guessing yourself or whether you're just coming out as you are. And you've asked me that question, and I'm just saying straight out from my head, my heart, my lips, my mouth to you, just as it comes out. And that's exactly what I do. I don't second guess. I don't rethink. I don't think too long. I think sometimes when you think too much, as the question that you're asking,
Sure.
Terence, is when you start making up all these stories in your head. And I know from my past experience, people have made up stories based on their own prejudices, their own bias, their own this, their own that. And you think, okay, I've seen that and it's been done to me. Why should I do this to anybody else? I don't agree with that. There's a saying, isn't there, where you only give out what you receive, right? So if you give out the good, hopefully you'll get the good back. I mean, it's not always the case, but it is if you try hard enough. And I think if you can walk that path and not deceive yourself, because you keep on asking the question about being, deceiving yourself. If you don't deceive yourself, then you can say what you want to say and know in your head and mind and soul that what you're saying is right. and that's how it comes through. And it's really, really hard to put it into the physical world, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, where we think with our minds, it's more kind of in the soul, within yourself, in your heart, and all of that. And I think that's where it comes through from me.
I was going to
from
ask
me.
about that because you mentioned the spiritual and the religious a bit. So I was going to ask that because I think that's I would assume that's a big part of it, because in some ways, like, how do I want to ask this? I guess in the spirit of what you're
That's the way. I don't
I'm
have
just
a
trying to think of the
problem.
right. I'm trying to think how to frame it so that I get the right point across. Like, if the point is like, if you don't second guess, if you just kind of say what you feel, there's a trust in that. There's a trust in, I can trust what I feel, what I'm thinking is the right thing. Is that ultimately rooted and grounded in the spirituality and religion, that you believe like you are in touch with a greater force or a greater power? So therefore that gives you the trust that if something happens, if somebody says something to me and I just respond, I trust that that is the honest, right response there. Is that kind of how it works?
I think you've just hit the nail on the head, because it is about the trust in the process, the trust in what you feel. I was actually on a different podcast and I was saying about, you know, we think with our heads, you know, our kind of mental faculties and all of this. And then we have this very kind of spiritual side to us as well. I mean, not everybody does, but some people do. A lot of people do. And of course, that's been developed over time for me. And I do trust the process. I do trust what I feel. I was actually saying that I feel I understand my gut. I trust my intuition. So hence you trust the process. And I do trust the process. So I lean into it and go, yeah, if you ask me a question, I mean, you said, oh, can I ask you that? Yeah, of course you can, because I'm an open book. If you've got something to hide, then I'll go, oh no, please, Terence, don't ask me that question. You know, whereas I'm saying, yeah, go and ask that question and I'll give you a true answer.
Yeah.
And I think that if you trust the process, then it's fine. It's fine, because I've got nothing to hide. I know clearly in my head, there's no deceit in terms of, oh, you know, people did wrong because I did wrong. There's no kind of, you know, kind of twisting all of that. It's like, this is what it is, and I'm going to speak my truth. And that's, to me, that's how I want to come across.
Where does the ego fit into that? Because I think, and I guess I'm going to stick on this kind of psychological / spiritual thread, because I think it's super interesting, and I think your perspective on it is super interesting. So I hope you're cool with that. But the ego is something that people often think about. Of, you know, it's got its function, but it also has its downside. Maybe that's the thing that deceives us sometimes. In your case, do you feel like you've kind of eliminated your ego? You have it completely under control, and that's kind of that process that you trust, is that ego isn't coming out for you?